I'd like to turn the podium over to a very close friend of mine, a colleague. He happened to have worked on his PhD with me back in the 80s, my friend Michael Youssef.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Stein. I'm so honored to be here and accept your invitation. As you can tell, I have certain uniqueness. I'm probably the only one who have lived in the Middle East under what is true dictatorship. I have to chuckle when seeing the signs in the Liberation Square saying the tyrant, referring to Mubarak. And I said, those kids never lived under Nasser. They don't know what a tyrant is. When I was in high school, I was so afraid to talk to my friends because you don't know if they are government informant. Every second person was a government informant. Life was miserable. Those are the days in which I grew up and understood. Also, before I get to the topic of my topic, which I studied here in this hallowed ground and the direction of Dr. Stein and others back in the early 80s with my book, Revolt Against Modernity. You can have it here. You find it here in the library, The Muslim Zealots in the West. I have been going in and out of Egypt for the past 30 years or so, traveling as an outsider coming in. I have family there. I still visit on a regular basis, and I kept in connection with what's going on, and I sensed, as a trained sociologist, you cannot help but you feel what's going on. I remember as a young man in the 60s, early 60s, late 50s, many of my friends as a Christian were Muslims and didn't even distinguish. We had great friendships. Today, it's not the case. In the last 21 years, you see the tension rising. Well, he's a Christian, he's a Muslim, and the things really have changed, despite of the fact that a lot of freedom that is granted under Mubarak that was never experienced under Nasser or Sadat. But nonetheless, that's just the facts of life. Most of you probably know the history of 1925 when the Wahhabis were called back to the origin of Islam, to the Sharia, and to the original revelation to the Prophet of Islam, and then followed by a school teacher in Egypt by the name of Hassan al-Banna. He was a middle school, elementary school teacher, and he felt that, of course, the occupation of the British was a really sore point to a lot of Egyptians. My father lived through the 1919 revolution, and I remember him telling me stories about the 1919 revolution, and he witnessed it himself. And so the anger at the time and what gave rise to the Muslim Brotherhood that was founded by Hassan al-Banna is the fact that there is a club in Cairo where only British are allowed to be members. And that was not only happening within the movement itself of the Muslim Brotherhood, but also was happening among some army officers, particularly those who went and fought in 1948 and felt that they were betrayed. And so they came back with that anger and they said, we have to kick the British out, but the only way to kick the British out, we have to kick King Farouk out. And so in 52, and I'm moving fast, I'll be happy to fill in the blanks later on with questions. But you have to remember this. The Muslim Brotherhood was started as a liberation movement from the British occupation. They had a secret apparatus, and the secret apparatus started killing people. They killed the Prime Minister, Nukrashi Pasha, back in 1948, as well as some prominent Copts, Christians, and that was part of that secret apparatus. And the secret apparatus cooperated with the free officers, Nasser, Sadat, and all of those who were in that original group. And so they worked together with the understanding that they will use each other to get into power. Now the problem is who was going to use whom. And as it turned out, Nasser outwitted them. And once he got into power, he began to turn on them. And whether you believe that they attempted to kill him in Alexandria in 54, or that was, according to some estimates, was a decoy, or was a real thing, he that night arrested all of the leadership of the Muslim Brotherhood, and there they stayed in prison until Anwar Sadat came to power in 1971 when Nasser died. Sadat hated Nasser. He hated him with passion. Nasser used to refer to him fondly as the black donkey. And when he comes to the cabinet meeting, he would say, "Where's the black donkey?" And Sadat really resented Nasser immensely. And so when he came into power, he wanted to basically erase Nasser's memory and all of the socialism that Nasser stood for, and nationalizing of, and want to bring capitalism back. So he thought the one ally that can help him accomplish that is the Muslim Brotherhood. So he systematically began to release them from prison. And my own studies have shown that when the Muslim Brotherhood members came out of prison, they said, we need to organize politically, and they began to kind of sound to the extremists as soft. And so Takfir wal Hijra was born out of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they said the Muslim Brotherhood just got too soft on us. And from Takfir wal Hijra, when they failed, Al-Jihad came. And that's the group that I spend time talking to, interviewing, most often in a very clandestine way, because I did not know whom the government seeing me talking to, but we ended up having a great conversation. Several things that came out of those discussions back in 1982. And the members of the Jihad, they were the lower echelons, so the top ones have already been arrested. Some of them already who were involved in the assassination of Sadat were killed by that time. So they would say several things like this. We hated that they tell us that Islam is a religion of peace and making us look like Christianity. Forgiveness is not part of our culture and our religion, and you need to write this down. In fact, I remember one guy said to me, he said, if you don't write that down, we know where you live. That did not really excite my wife's husband. So I did, and in fact, if you get the book and you read it, I wrote exactly what they have indicated. They hated Sadat with passion, despite of the fact that he gave them a lot of liberties, because they said an apostate who would toast the Israelis is only deserved to die. And several things of that nature. Boutros Boutros-Ghali, who was referred to by Dr. Stein, was really a thorn in their side. How a Copt can occupy such an important position, and that was cause of anger as far as they were concerned, because an Islamic State, what is the goal of the jihad at that time. Well, all of that to fast forward, in the last 21 years, as I kept traveling year after year, I saw the rise of Islamic fundamentalism as it has become known now in the West. In 1984, I was in Alexandria for about a week or two, and I have not been back to Alexandria until 2 years ago. And the greatest shock that I've experienced is the emblems, because symbolism is very important in the Middle East. As Dr. Tariq Haji calls it, the logo, namely the niqab, the wearing of the Islamic dress, both men and women, and they were going into the beaches with it. And back in the early 80s, when I was in Alexandria, it was a very modern, Western, sophisticated city. But that was something that really I began to realize that there's something going on below the surface. There is, I've read, and I read on a regular basis, some of the Islamic websites on a regular basis, sometimes even on a daily basis. And the anger and the hatred, not only toward the Christians and toward Pope Shenouda, and I'm not an Orthodox, but the representative of the Christian community in Egypt, and the fact that demonstrations against him and all that boiling of the anger was coming, had to go somewhere. And I was one of the least surprised people when I saw them taken to the streets. Now, having said that, I have no doubt in my mind that there are very genuine, secular-minded individuals, a lot of university students, who went initially into the streets to protest because the jobs, the economy, the inflation, and all of the stuff that you already heard about, it's a sheer frustration on the part of young people. And that is understandable. But I think what was stirring the pot and what was creating all of this ferment, at least in my estimation, is the Muslim Brotherhood working behind the scene. In the beginning, they sent the word out, no anti-American, no anti-Israel slogans, because we don't want them to see us up front, who we are and what we're doing. And an eyewitness account just 2 days ago, they said there are basically somebody coming in, literally handing cash, handing food, handing water to the folks in Liberation Square in order that they may stay there. Now, what will happen? Only God in heaven knows. And in my estimation, it depends on how the Obama administration handles this situation. If they repeat what Jimmy Carter did and sitting on their hand and not taking these really genuinely democracy seekers and help bring about a secular government, then the Muslim Brotherhood, who are not strangers to violence, not strangers to bloodshed, will be the ones who will take over. And so it can go either way. And I, as a man of faith, pray that it will go the democracy route. Thank you very much.